It was a dark night of perishing cold in 1939. Waves crashed against the hull of the Wiki with the force of a furious titan, rocking the mid-sized whaling vessel to its core. Supplies and men were thrown to and fro across every deck as Captain Wake, a salty old sea dog if ever there was one, kept a white-knuckle grip on the wheel.
"Don't let go, you bunch of drunken layabouts! Hold on for dear life!"
he yelled, trying to project his gravelly voice over the thunder, cracks, and roaring North Sea currents.
"Lest ye be lost to the depths below!"
It was the worst any of them had ever seen, this stretch of sea of the Shetland Isles. The sky was pitch black, occasionally split open by jagged webs of chain lightning. The towering waves looked like mighty hills rising and falling all around them, effortlessly tossing the 60-foot whaling boat like some child's toy. Hours before, it had quite literally been smooth sailing. The crew had departed from a port in Norfolk and sailed out to make their living in meat, blubber, and various ambergris. They were hardy sailors, seasoned denizens of the seven seas, with all the scars and manly sailor tattoos to match. Captain Wake had recruited all of his most trusted men this whaling season. They were an experienced and loyal crew, men who, when commanded, could cut the wings off a fly with the throw of a harpoon. Men who'd learned to love the taste of ancient canned provisions and weevil-infested hardtack. Wake believed each and every one of them could swim straight down to Davy Jones' locker, then breaststroke their way back up. And it had, until the weather turned sour, been a reasonably successful outing for all involved. They bagged a humpback on the edge of Scandinavian waters, pin-cushioning the beast with harpoons before dragging it aboard for butchery. The harvest would fetch a hefty sum. Not enough to make each man aboard rich, of course, not by a long shot, but it would be enough for them each to live comfortably for the next several weeks on the spoils. It was actually on the way back from their successful expedition that ominous clouds started gathering overhead. The transition from day to night was swift and jarring, and the sea roiled up like some great leviathan below them, a nautical revenge for stealing from the sea's own bounty. The men thought they knew its ways. Perhaps they could even master and control it. They would be humbled by the true horrific might of the great waters that connect us all, from island to island, continent to continent. Now in the middle of that diabolical storm, Captain Wake was at least half certain that he saw his first mate, Pattinson, knocked overboard and swallowed with a choked scream into the icy black water.
"It's a blessing,"
Captain Wake thought,
"that at least in weather this frigid, the cold will take the poor man quickly."
Pattinson's heart would have stopped from the shock of the cold before he even had a chance to drown. There were worse ways to die at sea. But Wake couldn't think about death. He was sure that the sea would claim him in its own time. It would almost be an insult to a life lived on the freedom of the open ocean to die a landlubber. Everyone made their debt to Poseidon eventually, but not today. While the whaling crew used lengths of rope to tie themselves to different parts of the ship, Captain Wake summoned up every ounce of might in his stubborn wreck of a body. He turned the wheel against the force of the tide, a huge wave breaking over the side of the boat and soaking the entire deck with a cascade of freezing water.
"You'll not take me, sea devils!"
he barked against the water.
"I am your master!"
And as if somehow conceding to the sheer willpower of the captain, the storm seemed to let up, if only by a smidgen. Wake laughed a deep, throaty bellow that would give children nightmares. The crew within earshot were astonished. Had their captain commanded the sea itself? When the waters miraculously steadied, the remaining crew took to the upper deck and cheered for their brave captain, the one who'd saved most of them from spending the rest of eternity in a watery grave. Just another handful of names among the sea's countless tragedies, a tally of death greater than any army man had ever mustered. But the chorus of salty adulation was interrupted by a desperate wail echoing across the surface of the sea. Now that the storm had died down, there was no ignoring it. The sound of a man screaming out.
"Help me! Oh, please, for the love of God, help me!"
At first, Captain Wake thought with some dim hope that it was Pattinson, somehow survived the onslaught that had thrown him into the deep. But no, It couldn't be. This voice was hoarse and unfamiliar, the clipped tones of a military man warbled by desperation and terror. But given the sea had stolen at least one man from him today, it would only be right for him to save another and correct the balance, wouldn't it? Captain Wake ordered the men to set a course for that wailing, hopeless voice out in the water, and like the ocean itself, they obeyed. And it wasn't long before they saw the stranded man wading in his pitiful yellow life raft, battered by the elements. He'd been weathered and sunburned, and Wake recognized the tattered remains of his naval officer's uniform immediately. Wake had been a Navy man himself back in the day, before he left to pursue his calling as a whaler.
Oh, thank goodness!
The man on the raft yelled, sounding on the verge of tears as he waved his arms back and forth.
I'm saved! Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you!
As they got closer, it didn't take the captain or the rest of the crew long to figure out what had happened here. They were in the fledgling days of World War II, after all. There was a good chance that he was one of the few survivors of a British naval destroyer blown up by a German U-boat. Who even knows how long the poor wretch had been out here, screaming for help and contemplating the possibility of his incoming death. The Wiki pulled up alongside the stranded man and threw down a rope ladder towards the battered raft. The whaling captain stood in anticipation, wondering why the naval officer wasn't immediately climbing up into the boat.
What's wrong, lad?
Captain Wake asked.
Lost your sea legs?
But before the man on the raft could respond, the sea began to rumble again, even though the air was still and the skies were clear. Something huge was surfacing from beneath the waves, some dark and terrible shape, though it's not some forgotten sea monster. It's
a submarine?
The captain yelled in disbelief. A 42-meter monstrosity of a sub, to be exact. One that barely even looked seaworthy. The black metal of its hull, rusty, cracked, and studded with thousands upon thousands of barnacles. The conning tower of the submersible split the water's surface tension like the obsidian blade of some great, impossible dagger. All the crew of the whaler watched, aghast, as the hatch of the top of the conning tower opened. What happened next occurred in a matter of seconds, too fast for even a seasoned captain like Wake to be able to do anything about it. The lifeboat, the submarine, and the Wiki were all dragged down into the murky depths by some unknown force at a stunning speed of 200 kilometers per hour. Before anyone could even realize what was happening, all had been swallowed up by the ocean, never to be seen again. And the surface of the water became as still and placid as a mirror. An excerpt from a 1939 issue of the Glasgow Weekly Report painted a grim but altogether more mundane recounting of what exactly happened to the Wiki and its crew on those freezing waters. Whale smashes ship. A great tragedy on the seas. Local fishermen claim that a whaling ship off the coast rescued a castaway, only to be immediately attacked by a mammoth marine creature, fitting the description of an abnormally large whale. The whale likely punctured the ship's hull during the attack, as it is claimed that the ship sank incredibly quickly, with no known survivors. The fishermen present also claim the event accompanied a sudden drop in the already frigid North Sea's waters, describing it as Arctic. A convenient excuse for most. The sea can at times be a cruel mistress, and while the briny deep may not provide the water we drink, it still covers most of our planet. A stark reminder that even though it surrounds us, billions still lack reliable access to clean, safe water. That's why we're joining up with #TeamWater to help create access to one of the most important resources we've got. If ever you've heard our stories of daring and selfless Foundation agents and researchers saving the human race and thought, man, I wish I could be part of something like that, well, now's your chance. Because dirty water hurts more people across the world every day than any anomaly ever could. #TeamWater's goal is to raise $40 million and bring clean drinking water to 2 million people. Head over to TeamWater to learn more, donate if you can, and share this video with friends and family to help make a difference. Now, back to the scary sub dragging mariners to a watery grave. While it may not be the most well-known anomaly in the Foundation's catalog, SCP-2770 is actually one of the more deadly. Codenamed the Lure for obvious reasons, this mysterious two-part anomaly is responsible for the total destruction of hundreds of sea vessels, each incident leaving no survivors. How it functions is relatively simple. A distressed member of the British Navy in a life raft floating in the North Sea. If you attempt to rescue him, the terrifying decrepit submarine will rise up and then drag you so far down into the ocean you'll never be found again. It'll disappear for a while after claiming a victim, taking longer to reemerge depending on how many lives it's claimed in its last, well, let's just say, feeding. The cruelty of this anomaly is that it explicitly punishes you for being kind and attempting to save a distressed person in obvious need. If the raft isn't approached, it will be pulled underneath the water, out of sight, where it will remain inactive for a period before returning in search of new victims. If you're out on the water on a more modern vessel, the only clue that you'll be in danger is that the emergence of the raft will cause your radio and diagnostic equipment to produce static. And if you don't pay heed to that, you just better hope the boats of Mobile Task Force Gamma 6, codenamed the Deep Feeders, are there to intercept you before you can be added to the ever-growing underwater graveyard. But even that isn't guaranteed to keep you safe, given that some of the vessels dragged into the depths of SCP-2770 have belonged to the Foundation. It really seems that nobody is fully safe from this thing. That's why, in a highly classified covert operation, the Foundation decided on a new method of trying to permanently contain the anomaly and prevent it from ever taking another life. This incredibly serious and risky project was given a name with true impact to suit the gravity of the situation: Operation Kiddie Pool. The plan was elegantly simple. A high-speed stealth helicopter codenamed Lifeguard would swoop in during an activation event and use a kind of sophisticated hook on the end of a long rope to capture the life raft and the anomalous shipwreck survivor on it, almost like the world's most high-stakes round of deep-sea fishing. Once the raft was captured, it would be taken to a Foundation containment site coincidentally located in the middle of an extremely arid desert, hundreds of miles away from the nearest body of water. The theory was that by landlocking the anomaly, they would take away the source of its power, depriving it of a way to escape and remanifest. And the craziest thing is, the plan actually worked. Lifeguard swooped in exactly as planned during a manifestation event. It scooped up the raft directly out of the water without incurring the wrath of the submarine and flew directly to the designated Foundation containment site at full speed. Once there, the Navy man was contained without a struggle. He spent a week on site without activating his anomalous abilities and generally behaving cooperatively with Foundation staff. Perhaps this lure was as much a victim of the anomaly as any of the boats. An agent was sent into the testing chamber to interview the new anomaly one-on-one. The agent said hello to the Navy man, who replied, "Hello, sir. Once again, I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the rescue with your crazy hovering plane. I've been stranded out there for I don't know how long." Off to a good start. They then asked if he could tell the Foundation his name. "I do, sir. Lieutenant Edward Rowling, Royal Navy, at your service." When asked how long he'd been out there on his raft, given the archaic design of his uniform, he rubbed his neck and said, "I do not know. Truth be told, the months and years just started to meld together after a while. And apologies about my uniform. I'll admit it's seen better days." He became a lot less talkative when the Foundation agent asked him about the submarine that seemed responsible for the deaths of all those people. He seemed almost dazed, lost in a fog of thoughts. "I think," he said, trailing off. "You think what?" The agent pressed him. Lieutenant Rowling leaned forward, close enough to whisper, and twisted his face into a smile. "I think you forgot about the water table, you bloody idiot." The ground underneath them cracked and gave way to the conning tower of the terrible submarine, rising out of the earth. The agents in the room had just long enough to realize the reality of their own doom, but yet again, not enough time to do anything. Just like all the boats and ships before, the entire Foundation containment site was pulled into the ground at incredible speed, leaving no trace that it had ever even been there. Subterranean imaging has revealed no remaining evidence of the site, nor anyone or anything in it. It is simply a blank and empty desert. And now it's assumed that everyone in the building is dead. The raft hasn't surfaced in the North Sea since this incident, but really, it could happen any day now, when it's feeling hungry again. Don't forget to join in on the hashtag Team Water Challenge to raise $40 million to help 2 million people with life-changing clean water that will flow for decades to come. Visit teamwater.org and donate if you can.
And if you can't, you can still help by sharing this video around and spreading the word about #TeamWater.